I call to order the August 28th, 2024 Area Board of Zoning Appeals of Tippecanoe County meeting. First item on the agenda is roll call. Patrick?
Steve Clevenger.
Present.
Tim Vanderplatz.
Present.
Brad Hallberg.
Present.
Rabita Raj Karnakar.
Present.
Gary Schroeder.
Present.
Robert Novak.
Present.
Ed Butts.
Present.
We have a quorum. Everybody's present today. Next item on the agenda is approval of the previous meeting minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the July 24th, 2024 BZA public hearing as submitted.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any corrections? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved as submitted. New business.
All cases are ready.
Great. I will go ahead and take the public hearing motion, please.
I move that there be incorporated into the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, the application and all documents filed therewith, the staff report and recommendation on the applications to be heard this evening, and responses from the checkpoint agencies.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
Can you talk into the microphone? We can't hardly hear you back there.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. This is just a public hearing motion, so it's a procedural, but we'll make sure to speak up for you. So we have a motion and a second. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. I'd like to briefly describe our procedures for tonight's meeting. Each case will be heard following a motion and a second from the board. We will ask the staff to report on its findings. Following the staff report, we will ask the petitioner to present his or her case, after which anyone wishing to support the petitioner's request for a variance or special exception will be asked to come forward. After hearing from the petitioner and those speaking on his or her behalf, we will ask those speaking against the petition to present their arguments. The petitioner will then be allowed to rebut arguments raised by the opposition to his or her petition. Following the rebuttal, the board may wish to ask questions of the petitioner, supporters, and opponents of the petition or of the staff. The staff will have the opportunity at this time to make any necessary clarifying comments. We will then vote by use of a prescribed ballot. 4 votes are necessary to make any decision. In the absence of 4 votes, either for or against, the petition is automatically continued to the next meeting. Please observe the following guidelines for the sake of time and fairness to all. State your name and address for the record before you speak. If you're not the petitioner, there is a clipboard on the staff desk to please sign in after you speak. Limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Do not repeat arguments that have been brought up by others. Remember that all visual aids used to support your arguments will remain the property of the board. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. Please step out of the room before using your cell phone. And with that in mind, we'll hear the first case.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2170, Gorley and Lori McKenzie. Petitioners and owners are requesting a variance to reduce the rear setback from the required 25 feet to 17 feet to allow an addition to the single-family home. The R1B zone property is Lot 227 in the village of Arbor Chase, more commonly known as 3604 Farnsworth Drive in West Lafayette, Wabash 05, Northwest 23-4, UZO 2-3-8.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please. Amanda?
Thank you. Amanda Esposito, Area Plan Staff. We are on the north side of West Lafayette here in the Village of Arbor Chase subdivision. This is the second variance request in this relatively new subdivision. BZA 2103 was approved by the ABZA in early last year. That request was also for a reduced rear building setback. So as you can see, this subdivision is all R1B, which is single family with a higher density. Aerial here. It does kind of appear from the aerial that the house might have 3 street frontages, but in fact, the large landscaped area just to the south of the house is an outlot as part of the subdivision where the sign for the subdivision is located. I have a good picture of it here. You can see that's the backyard looking through the sign on the corner of the street there that borders on Calbearer. There is also a platted 10-foot wide drainage and utility easement along the rear lot line of this lot. Even with considering that where the proposed structure is going to go would be outside of that easement, so it would not encroach on the easement. The petitioners are planning to enclose an existing concrete slab as a enclosed patio addition to their house. So because of the existence of that large outlot to the rear of the house, the ordinance itself in this case kind of works a hardship. The findings here are all met. It would result in an unusual or unnecessary hardship as defined by the zoning ordinance. So because of that, we are actually able to recommend approval for this setback of 17 feet instead of 25. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Petitioner or his or her representative.
Gorley McKenzie, 3604 Farnsworth Drive, West Lafayette. Basically, what she said, we're just wanting to enclose what is existing as a patio, add on 7 feet to a screened-in area. And I kind of agree with everything she said, so any questions?
We may have some for you later.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to support the petition? Anyone in opposition to the petition? Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, we have a ballot.
I show 7 votes in favor and none opposed.
That variance is approved, and we'll hear our next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2171, Laura Brown. Petitioner and owner is requesting a special exception to use an existing duplex as a transient guest house operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, for a maximum of 4 guests in one unit and 6 guests in the second unit. The R2 zone property is half of Lot 10 in Kendall's addition to the city of Lafayette, commonly known as 1222 South 9th Street in Lafayette, Fairfield 29, Northeast 23-4, amended on 8/19/2024 with conditions and comments,
Second.
commitments.
Have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff. Brian?
Okay. This 9th Street neighborhood, this historic home dates from the 1840s. This area zoning around here is R2. There's some R2U and other kind of a mix of residential zones, some mixed use. The home itself was converted to a duplex around 1993, we suspect, based on our research. And this is not necessarily an uncommon thing, especially for a historic home, so there's a fair bit of this in the vicinity. Obviously, the home was kind of built before cars were, so we don't have a garage or driveway. Nothing would have been roughed in up to that point since the original construction. So there's no on-site parking. There is public on-street parking available on 9th Street. City of utilities, of course, are available. Here's a look at the home. The petitioner states that the main first and second floors include 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. This would have a maximum occupancy of 6 people, so that's the first unit. And then the second unit is in a lower level, access from the side, which we may have a photo there of that, maybe around the corner there. That a little smaller, contains 1 bedroom, 1 bath. This, in combination with a sleeper sofa, the unit could accommodate up to 4 guests. So parking, obviously, they're relying on street public parking that I believe is unregulated by the city presently. That could change. That's up to street department. But in terms of the things they can commit to on their property, they are providing a kind of a noise prohibition between 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And so that's sort of the limitation, before and after that is kind of lights out, so to speak. They are making a commitment there will be no parties hosted in either unit. So in terms of the tests, we'll go ahead and leave it there. It's our opinion that the standards for the UZO will be met in this case, that the general purposes of the ordinance are not being subverted by the proposal, and the proposal will not permanently injure other properties in the same district and vicinity because of the usual suspects: traffic generation, outdoor lighting, noise, etc. So we are recommending approval with the conditions and commitment. Again, the conditions are to obtain a permit from the city, and then the commitment is each unit may only be reserved for a single booking at a time, so you can't double up. And then outdoor noise will be limited to 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., so after 10 p.m. shuts down, and then the no parties clause. So with that, we are recommending approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Hi, my name is Laura Brown, and I purchased this house at 122 South 9th Street. I actually purchased the house for my mother, who's 82 years old. She's right here. And she moved here in the springtime from Las Vegas and has not really enjoyed even the springtime cold weather. So we have kind of come to an agreement that Grandma will hang around during the summer with the grandkids in the home. And then, as fall starts, she would like to go back to Las Vegas, where she was currently or previously residing. And, so to help with the mortgage and all those things, we felt like this was kind of a good compromise to allow it to be an Airbnb or short-term rental during the times in which she doesn't need access to it, like she'd be there during the holidays, like Christmas and Thanksgiving and those types of things. Currently, the basement apartment is rented by a full-time resident, and we do have an 18-month lease with that individual. And he's a great resident and probably a lot of people know him around town. So he would, stay in that. And right now, the only place that we'd be able to utilize as transient housing would be on the first floor. We're hoping to showcase the fact that it's one of the most historic homes in the area. It's one of the first 10 homes supposedly built. It was the original postmaster's home. Fun fact about the post office in Lafayette, they also were the place that had the first airmail in the United States. So we'd like to be able to showcase some of those things that make Lafayette kind of unique and special with this house. And we're pricing it at a very high price point with expensive furnishings. So, this would be, kind of similar to a Gibson apartment building. They have some Airbnbs there. We're going to require a minimum 25-year age. We live here locally, and we'll be helping. I'll personally be managing it with the assistance of my husband, and my mother's things would still be stored in some of the spaces that are locked. So, this is a place that, we're only utilizing this, for people to follow the rules. We'd also put in the listing, because I would like to be respectful of the street parking, that there will be a limit of 3 cars for the upstairs rental and 2 cars for the downstairs rental, so that we wouldn't have 6 people bringing 6 cars. And, although it is not policed, we will be asking them to provide their license plates so that, people understand that it isn't just a, would like to have. We will be checking to verify that. So, do you have any other questions?
We might have some for you later.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? Please come forward if you're wishing to speak in opposition.
I'm Jeff Boswell. I used to live at 207 South 9th, almost across the street from this property. I've downsized and now live at 800 State Street. I joined the 9th Street Hill Neighborhood Association at the beginning, which was about 1986. I went through the blood, sweat, and tears of pulling the association up from the supposed ashes of the Phoenix. We met as an association to deal with trash and things on the street and became a welcoming association. At some point, the Purdue requested people on the street to open their homes to the World War II veterans that needed a place to stay, and that's how we wound up with rentals along the way. We have sought to be worthy part of the Lafayette community and to give back to it in ways like our luminaria display around Christmas time and Festoon 4th display in July. House and garden tours have promoted the neighborhood and help us raise the value of homes in the area and make it a desirable place to live. We have been good neighbors. That is not in question. We choose to be welcoming and diverse, which makes moving to the neighborhood inviting. We are happy to live arm in arm with all who come to live with here, always hoping for families to reside, but welcoming those who must rent. However, we have worked hard to restrict those transient individuals and businesses that want to take advantage of our good reputation. We continue to strive to keep the neighborhood a neighborhood. An Airbnb is diametrically opposite of the interests of our community and could prove to be detrimental. On-street parking has always been an issue, but as neighbors, we have found ways to manage gracefully. Traffic from an Airbnb is not likely to be so sensitive to those who live next door.
Thank you, and if you could please sign in on the clipboard. Anyone else in opposition to the petition?
Good evening. My name's Nancy Nargi. I live at 410 South 9th Street. In 1995, we bought this property and had it for about 20 years. And during that time, there was usually a couple that lived in the main apartment and a single that lived in the basement, okay? At one point, we rented the main apartment to 3 graduate students. So along that time, we usually had 3 or 4 residents in that house, okay? When it was sold, we sold it in 2015, and since then, there's been one person who lives in the downstairs and one in the main part of the house. So there's only been really 2 residents there in that house. Our concern is the parking. In front of the house, there are really 2 parking spots, and that's it. If you, and they have no off-site parking. The house just north of it, it has 3 units, and there's no, it's only on-street parking. The next one down has 2 more units, and there's all on-street parking. And the gentleman that lives in that unit parks up by the ball house, so he'll have room to park, and his truck won't get hit, because it's gotten hit several times. The next one down the street has 5 units, and it's empty at this point in time because they are renovating. And the next one down has 4 units, and the next one 3 units to the garden. Now, in those 7 houses, the one at the very south side of it and the north side have a big side yard, so there's probably a lot of parking. But there's 24 units there, and there's off-street parking probably for maybe 7 or 8 cars out of those units. So our concern is, in the past, it's been difficult to find parking spots there. When we rented it, only 3 or 4 people lived there. In the past year, last 9 years, only 2 people have lived there. So they say they need 4 spots. In front of the house, there's only really 2. So our concern is the people, the residents who live in all those other apartments, where are they going to park? And it's going to be, you know, sort of a problem unless you live way to the north or way to the south. So I think that's our one concern. Now, the fact that she said that her mother's going to live there some of the year, so part of the year it's only going to be 1 person in the that main apartment, sort of eases it a little bit. But if you have 6 people there and 4 people you have 10 people in that house, there's going to be a lot of cars. So that's our main concern, is the parking for the residents who live there. So, thank you.
Thank you. And ma'am, if you could sign in, please. Speaking in opposition.
Hello, my name is Zula Kress, and I live directly across the street at 203 South 9th Street. I won't say anything else about parking except to confirm, living across the street, that it is a problem already. And my other thing I wanted to say was, I know Airbnbs well. My family owns Airbnbs. You can't guarantee there's not going to be a party when there's no one on site. You'd like to, and they can say they won't do it, but there's no guarantee of that. Also, we would love 9th Street Hill to be owner-occupied. And I know several people who were willing and put in offers to buy this home to be owner-occupied. And I would really love that to be something that happens in our neighborhood again. And I think Airbnbs, the intent is to be owner-occupied, and especially in active neighborhoods like this. If it was an owner-occupied Airbnb where they could regulate parties and straight parking, check all the license plates, things like that, that would be different. But this is not that case. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Hi, my name's Sarah Anderson. I live in 118 South 9th Street in the 2nd unit. I've lived there for about 2 years now. I'm coming up on my 3rd year, and I've lived in Lafayette for 3 years now. I would like to echo the community concerns. I've noticed that there's such a lovely community on 9th Street that I'm really happy to be a part of, and I would hate for, and I've been friends with the different people who have lived in this house. I live right next door. And we chat when we see each other in the backyard, and if we all have dogs, it's a really lovely place. And I would hate for an Airbnb to disrupt that sense of calm and peace that we have. And the parking issue, as somebody who actually lives there and has experienced the parking as neighbors, we've figured out where each person gets to park, so it's very harmonious. And an Airbnb would definitely shake things up, especially even limiting it to 5 cars is a lot of extra cars in that space. Even when a third car moved into my house, it really shook up the parking. So even just one extra car can really rock things. I also have concerns about the fact that this location is so close to downtown and to Purdue, and could be a really great place for student housing, professor housing, and just general residents of Lafayette to live, especially as Purdue grows and the community grows. There's an increased lack of housing, and housing costs are rising. So having an Airbnb drives up housing costs for local people and takes away housing from people who would live in the community and contribute to it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name is Ann Bouja, and I am a new member of this community. We moved here a year and a half ago. We live at 532 South 9th Street. When we were moving here, I told my husband, I don't want to live in suburbia anymore, please. I want to live where I can walk downtown. And I want to live in a neighborhood where people talk to each other, people participate, and the 9th Street Hill meets all of those desires of mine. I can only reiterate some of the things that my neighbors have said. Parking is an issue. I'm lucky. I have parking. There are so many houses along the street because of the age of the street, because of the density of these old buildings. There's no parking available. I know that it's difficult to police when you're nowhere near. And having a promise that someone is going to be policing this property in terms of parties and overextended guests staying there, you've signed up for 4 and 9 show up. Those are issues that are going to be nigh on impossible for this young woman to police from across town. But one of the things that really startled me in her argument was the desire on her part to showcase the special features of this house. Now, we in this neighborhood really do work hard to maintain our properties, to demonstrate their historic accuracy and significance. We're members of one of the first and largest National Registry of Historic Places neighborhoods in the nation. And if we've got someone coming in who's going to showcase the special features of this house, how? She's not going to be involved in the 9th Street Hill Association. She's not going to be out there festooning for the 4th. She's not going to be helping put up luminarias at Christmas time. She's not going to help with this weekend's croquet tournament that's happening between the St. Mary's neighborhood and the 9th Street Hill Association. She's not going to be there for Eat in the Street or the Halloween dinner, progressive dinner. None of those are the things that showcase this. They're not just buildings. This is a neighborhood. It's active, it's participatory, and it's people working hard to build relationship. And I think that's what Lafayette wants. So I'm hoping you will vote in opposition to this request. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could sign in, please. Speaking in opposition.
Hello, my name's Matthew Smith. I'm a realtor here in town with Keller Williams. I live at 906 South 22nd Street and can confirm I actually sought to purchase the property for myself. So I have some skin in the game here. It is not a personal matter for me whatsoever that I did not get the property myself, but I am a good example of someone that actually discovered the neighborhood and was welcomed into neighborhood events and sought to move into the neighborhood because it was such a lovely community with lovely people who do a lot together and make it more than a commercial area would be. As a realtor, my perspective on Airbnbs has become akin to that of the recent law that was passed. I don't have to give you guys the data on Airbnbs and the shortage of supply of houses for Lafayette residents, but I think this is an example of what I believe we've been trying to go away from and help control for a little while now to give more opportunities for people that would live in the house themselves to be a part of our local neighborhoods and our history, and who will spend their money in downtown Lafayette themselves. So, any questions for me? Thank you.
Nope. Thank you. Speaking in opposition. Last call for speaking in opposition. And Laura, you have a rebuttal?
So, as I mentioned, originally the intent was to purchase the home for my mother, and there were a couple of offers that went through, that fell through before I showed up. So I certainly don't know where everybody was in that equation. There may have been people afterwards that were interested, but this was not something that was like, you know, the day it was on the market, I tried to put an offer in. I have actively reached out to the Historical Society and Sean to introduce myself because I do want to be part of the community. I absolutely will help with putting up the luminaries. We belong to the country club
If you can address.
We belong to the country club up the road, and we've also fallen in love with the community. And this is why I thought it would be a lovely place for my mother to be able to come and spend time and make friends. My mother doesn't have a car, so on the times when she's in the residence, there will be no one there. Important that I forgot to mention the first time, the current resident who is downstairs has offered to help with any kind of issue with the home that would be on site. And so, you know, this is someone who will be there to make sure that there aren't parties, will be there to make sure people aren't smoking outside, will be there to make sure that these things are appropriate. And we also have other student rentals. We have recently, and I can verify this with Purdue, you know, instead of offering it to students, we offered it to visiting professors who were struggling to find at a $2,000 a month discount housing so that they could be in a home that we owned on the West Lafayette side. So we are not people that are not involved and invested in the community. And I would want, you know, everyone to rest assured that my intent was to pick this house for this very idea that it does have a sense of community. We just went to the Han Museum experience on Sunday that they had. And this is a place that, you know, we also want to be able to use as, you know, a showcase in the sense of, you know, it has history with Lafayette that we want to be able to make sure that the people that are visiting appreciate and enjoy and respect the community. With regards to parking, I mean, I have had, you know, I've invested another $20,000 to $30,000 in the house since we purchased it because there were things that had been in disarray. And while I was there, I've met a lot of the neighbors who've come up and talked to me. And, you know, we've exchanged numbers. People have told me things that they knew were wrong with the house, for instance, that I didn't know when I purchased it. And so, you know, and they've asked to come in and, you know, see some of the things that we're doing with the house. We've had a huge construction van out in front parked for a couple of weeks. And, you know, I brought a U-Haul up to unload things, and I've never had a problem with parking. It is a public street, and I do want to be respectful of that. So we, originally had thought we could do 8 people in the upstairs unit, and we did reduce it down to 6 in consideration of some of the concerns that the people around us suggested. We also said that we would suggest and limit the number of parking spaces, asking them to give us a license plate. We have another unit, and it's a very active place that we go and are part of the community in the other unit in which we live, and the neighbors know us by, personal, and they can reach out to me if they have any concerns. I can't wait to decorate it for the holidays and make it festive to be part of the experience, and my mother, I guarantee you, has a lot of decorations. I had to move them here. So, I do appreciate and understand what everyone is saying, but this isn't as though I purchased this unit to make it a full Airbnb and be all the time with both pieces. It's a unit that has an 18-month resident that is willing to help us with on-site issues. And we have a second unit that we've reduced the number to be respectful and, keep the harmonious efforts of the street continuing. Do you have any other questions?
We may have some for you later.
Okay.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board?
I've got a question for the owner.
Go ahead, Brad.
Microphone.
Is it on now?
No.
When it's red, it's on.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. So you have a renter in the basement unit. That rental agreement is for 18 months, is that
Yes.
correct? So if that renter was to leave, what is your plan to keep an eye on the property, to manage the parking spaces, to look out for parties after that, if that renter happens to leave?
So 2 options. One is we have 3 boys that are currently in college, and 2 of them have suggested that they want to come back to West Lafayette, and we would like them to not live with us. So my one son in particular is super excited about possibly being able to live in the unit. Alternatively, my husband is a professor at Purdue and has 5 graduate students and a postdoc. And so we also have access to some other students that are coming from other parts of the world, and it is hard for them to secure housing. And so that we do have a long-term plan for that.
I also have a question. Help me understand the building a little bit better. You stated that you have a tenant in there currently under an 18-month lease.
Yes.
You're seeking permission to have 2 separate Airbnbs, transit guest housing. How many total units are in the home?
2.
So you have one that's occupied, but you're looking for an Airbnb there. Then the second one, where your mother, when she's in town, I would assume upstairs she would reside.
It's the main level and upstairs. And the apartment is downstairs and behind the backside.
So, and there again, that's where I'm maybe a little bit off. So is there a total of 3 units in that house or 2?
2 units. So it's like a house. The main level, you walk in and there's an upstairs.
But
And
you're
that's one
seeking an
unit.
Airbnb for somebody that has long-term rental in it.
Well, I find this experience a little bit stressful, so I didn't want to have to come back and do the second unit later on, so I figured we'd just try to do the whole process at one time. And then if the unit ever got to a point where, for example, my son wanted to live in the upstairs and he had a girlfriend, then maybe we would do the Airbnb downstairs, or vice versa. We'd have some flexibility, so it could be like a family portion for one and still be able to use the other one for Airbnb.
Fair enough. Also, because you're in a city setting, density is a bit larger. In the drawing, you had a fire pit in the backyard, but you stated that there will be no parties. Are you saying that Airbnb transit guest housing residents could not go outside, or they couldn't have a party? What is the difference between using the backyard with the fire pit and the party thing? Does that mean they can't bring anybody that isn't a registered guest? There again, because it's density, help me explain the backyard, the use of it, Can they do anything outside? Because they can't make noise after, I think it was
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So they could use the outside, but no parties, or?
So currently, there is a fire pit there when we purchased the home. The person who is renting the unit utilizes the fire pit. So I have to actually spend money to improve the fire pit because it's falling apart and in disarray. So I put the fire pit on there because that is something that the current resident rented the unit with access to, and he utilizes it. The current resident has parties, he has people over, and, and is respectful of the time, to be quiet in his lease agreement that we've put forth. So, if they're having a party, they're not able to invite additional guests, to the unit, then the unit would be more like a backyard that people are using the fire pit in versus a place where you're hosting a party. And it would, regardless of who wants to sit outside or not, would involve no smoking outside the property and would involve being quiet after 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
I've got a question concerning that as well. How are your neighbors going to know whether or not, if there is a party back there, that it's the resident back there inviting others over, or Airbnb? It seems to be kind of a backdoor that you don't know who's back there having a party then, if it's the long-term rental person can have a party back there, but the Airbnb people can't, and they're in the same building, same backyard. So how are the neighbors going to know if there is a complaint? How do they know that that's who's back there having that party, and whether or not that's kind of blurring the lines here, it seems to me.
Yeah, I don't know, like if I went to my neighbor's house on that street and I said, maybe you guys can answer this question. Is there a limit to how many people the neighbors that have testified to can have in their backyard?
There's probably not a limit, but.
Okay, well, I'm just saying if he's a resident, can I limit him is what I'm asking. I don't know that I can even do that. I'm asking, that's why the people that have testified, they have concerns or, so I don't know that you're able to. I'm going to pause. Does someone have an answer besides him? Is there a maximum number that a person who owns a home on that street is allowed to have in their yard? Because I understand what you're saying, but I don't know how to tell someone who's renting a unit that he has to limit the number of people that are back there. I can only control the people that are at the Airbnb portion to say this is what the expectations are. If you don't follow the rules, you'll be kicked out. There'll be no deposit. Same thing with if they're 25. And then the person who lives there would be the person that would be able to say, these 6 people are mine, and those 6 people or those 7 people, they have one too many people. One person needs to leave. I don't think that's uncommon.
I guess you're asking permission through the special exception to have an Airbnb. So, there are conditions there are rules that you have set forward and have stated, and the rules are kind of blurry because you have a long-term resident doesn't follow the same rules as the Airbnb customers. And so how do you tell the difference? If a neighbor calls the police or whatever because there's a party out back, how do they know that it's Airbnb versus a long-term resident? It seems like that if you're going to request this, that you're going to have consistent rules for everybody in the house, not just for the Airbnb. Otherwise,
I haven't thought of that. The resident has been there
area.
for a while, and he's never had a party, and there's never been any issues. So I guess historic behavior demonstrates future success. I see what you're saying. I'm not against this idea, but the idea that, he wants to have some people over in the backyard. He has a garden out there that he grows, tomatoes and lettuce and squash, and, he's probably had more people over than 4 people just to help with the yard.
I guess I'm not concerned about the number of people, but you stated, a party, that he could have a party back there, and that he wouldn't have to follow the same rules as the Airbnb. Well, that kind of, you don't know who is who's back, the neighbors don't know who's back there.
Well, I mean, if it gets to a party and they are concerned and it's after hours, they're going to call the police, and then the police are going to contact me, and I'm going to drive over in my pajamas and look around and say, who's Bob, and who's Mark, and who's Jenny? So then we will know. So, but I mean, I understand what you're saying. I was asking the question to say, can I legally limit someone who is renting a property for 18 months from me to say you can only have so many people because I'm going to have so many people? I mean, I think that, maybe I could say there's a maximum of 10 people total, so he could have 4 people, including himself, and the Airbnb could have 6 people. But, regardless, there shouldn't be any noise after 10 o'clock for either of them. So, I probably have an issue with both people if there's noise in the back, because he's supposed to tell me if there's a problem before they call the police.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else have questions?
Just my normal comments that I usually have for Airbnbs, and you can correct me, staff, if I'm wrong, but even though they have a limitation of 6 and 4, the county ordinance has a restriction of a maximum of 3 unrelated per unit. Would that be accurate?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Are you aware of that?
For rental properties?
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Even though you have 6, only 3 could be unrelated.
So 3 people that are renting the Airbnb can be unrelated, yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you're in a rental property business.
Yes.
The next issue that I at least want to hear from the board on, in the past, what we have done in some cases, since you make a very good case that your mother's going to be here, you're a local person to manage that, you have sources for Airbnb people to house that, maybe grad students or something. We propose a commitment, or it's either a condition or commitment that if it's approved, it would only be an Airbnb as long as you owned it and as long as you managed that. Is that something you'd be agreeable to? Meaning you can't make an Airbnb making the case of the things you're going to do, and then you sell it in 4 years, and now we have a different owner in the neighborhood that may not even be a local person. So we put a condition on that. Yes, we may approve yours, but it'd be with those conditions.
Can I mention one thing? Because I do have another rental property, I have a business that will potentially help me with, like,
Understand you can't do
okay, so I just want to
day-to-day.
make sure,
No,
because you say another business, I'm like, well, I myself as a sole proprietor of the business would be the people managing it, and I have no problem with that.
Meaning you're local, you'd be managed, even though
Yes.
you're not doing every detail, but you're still overseeing, would be managing it.
Yeah, well, I'll still be doing every detail.
Got it. So I would propose then for consideration that we add the condition that if approved, this Airbnb would cease if ownership changed or the owner is not the property manager.
Do I have a second?
Gary, could I ask something that might...
Can we have a second first, since we got a motion on the floor, and then...
Then we'll discuss it.
Then we can discuss it and then vote it up or down or modify.
I'll second it.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Go ahead,
Yes,
Robert.
For the staff, to allow an exception like this, if it goes, and I might be totally wrong, if it goes unused for 12 months, does it still stay in effect, or does it?
No, any special exception approval, if it is not used as approved for more than a 12-month period, it does cease to be valid.
So the lower unit, if there's an 18-month lease and we would approve it, it would cease by the time the lease is up.
The special exception is for the entire property, so I believe it would still be valid as long as some aspect of that property is still being used as a transient guest house.
I thought you'd have the answer.
And there also has to be, an owner isn't a slave to the market. So if they're advertising and there's no bites, they're not penalized for that. So as long as there's an intent to continue the use and it's demonstrated and provable, then they're the use does not cease. When they stop advertising and, just go back to a typical unregulated rental, then it will cease after 12 months, so.
So if both units are rented on a 12-month basis, then essentially the special exception ceases
Would
as
expire,
well.
yeah.
Would expire at the end of that 12 months.
You'd have to come back here again.
Yeah. It's okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion of that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. That would be a commitment.
Mind?
Go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I have one more question. Did you talk to the city about your proposal? Did you have any dialogue with city staff about this?
I met with the Area Planning Commission multiple times. Yeah.
Has the staff talked to the AO about this use?
We briefly discussed the parking issue with Lafayette, and they were fine with the way that it's set up.
With the proposed use, they were fine with it? Or the way it is set up right now?
For the parking and at least.
Okay.
But they did sign off that a special exception would be required. They had no other comments about this use.
Thank you.
I do have another question for staff. I noticed that there is not a commitment about the parking. Is that built into the petition, or does that need to be a commitment as well? How do we get enforcement on that?
I'm not sure what you mean, Steve, by parking. Is there some verbiage where they talked about how many cars they would have?
Yeah.
Yes, so there is a section in their findings where the petitioner said that we will be limiting the number of guests to a maximum of 3 street parking spots for the main level and a maximum of 1 street parking spot for the lower level. So that is, because it's part of the petition, it is binding on the petitioner, as is some of the other commitments that we have added as, calling out those commitments. So it is entirely up to the board if you wanted to add that to the list of commitments here.
But
I propose we add that to the commitment to uphold the parking statement from the petition to only allow 4 parking spots
I
for
think
the property.
I think it was 3 parking spots for the...
Upper unit and 1 for the lower unit.
And 2 for the lower unit.
Oh, was it 2?
So it's a total of 5, I believe.
I actually listed it
It's
as
just
one.
Oh, you listed it as
For the
one.
Airbnb, but if it's a resident, then they would, if there were 2 people, like a couple renting the apartment, let's say that the current resident got a girlfriend.
We cannot put a commitment for the residential use. This is for the non-residential use, which is the Airbnb.
Right,
So
so
that
that's what
would
I
be
was saying,
4.
for the transient housing request, this would
That's
be the
correct.
commitment, I understand.
So it'd be 3 and 1.
Yep.
Do you have enough to put that in a commitment for us?
Thank you.
And do we have a second?
Could you be more specific about that? We're trying to...
It's in the petition that they are limited to 3 parking spots for the main unit and 1 parking spot for the basement unit for the Airbnb use.
So you're going to allow 4 parking spaces on a property that may hold 2? Is that what you're talking about?
Does he want to
Wait.
come up here?
We're actually done with discussion, but a clarification that we don't control parking. They're just asking to limit the parking to that. They're self-limiting their parking.
I will second Robita's motion.
Any further discussion on that motion? Go ahead. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. So we do have a commitment to limit to a maximum of 3 for the main unit and 1 for the downstairs unit.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we've got a ballot. Thank you.
I show 6 votes in favor and 1 vote opposed.
Wow.
So the special exception has been approved, and we'll hear our next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2172 Faith Properties LLC. Petitioner and owner is requesting a variance to reduce the front setback from the required 60 feet to 0 feet to allow construction of a new skate park amenity on the south end of the existing parking lot along State Route 26 East on the 2 adjoining tracks. The R1 zone property is located at 5654 and 5572 Mercy Way, Perry, 19 Southeast, 23-3, UZO 2-1-7.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff. Amanda?
Thank you. We are on the east side of Lafayette, where the Faith campus is located, just off of 26. The subject property and most of the surrounding is zoned R1, single-family residential, with some agricultural in the dark green that you see here on the map. The Faith campus also encompasses most of that undeveloped land that you see to the northeast of the bolded outlined property here that is the subject of the variance request. Here is a closer-up image of the aerial here. You see the church and the school are on the left-hand side, the lower left-hand corner. The community center is on the right. There are some associated athletic fields around there and some other residential-type dwelling units. The property currently has more than the minimum required number of parking spaces for the use. The proposed skate park would take up 114 parking spaces on the southern end of their parking lot along 26 East. Even removing those 114 parking spaces, they are still over the required amount of parking. Along 26 East, a 60-foot setback is required from a section of the ordinance that addresses recreational accessory uses like this one, which is a skate park. It is intended to be a public facility to replace an older skate park that was behind the community center, recently demolished. There is sufficient visibility along 26. Some of the pictures here that I will show you, you can see from the pictures that there is a large elevation change between the parking area and 26. That grassy berm is along the road there. Again, sufficient amount of parking, so removing 114 spaces does not concern us at all. All right. So the large right-of-way along 26 does provide at least 4 feet of buffering between the traveling public and users of that skate park. And the higher elevation also means that driver's line of sight should not be impacted by the structure, which should only be, I believe, from the site plan at a maximum of 6 feet off of the elevation of the parking lot area. Regarding the ballot items, because of the large amount of land that the petitioner owns, staff was unable to find what we call an unusual or unnecessary hardship as defined by the ordinance. There is sufficient room on the property to build a skate park somewhere else where a variance would not be required. So because of that, we weren't able to recommend approval for this variance request of 0-foot setback. Because the hardship is kind of self-imposed in this case. They chose to build the skate park in this location for their own purposes, which is, high visibility of that skate park for all the users and public members. So we are recommending denial, and I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Good evening. Board members, fellow community members, my name is Alex Johnston. I'm here on behalf of Faith Church. I'm a church member, a father of children presently attending Faith Christian School, as well as a contractor that's completed many notable projects throughout the years, including the most recent additions to our Christian school, Faith East Community Center. I'm not a skateboarder. I do not claim to be, nor does anyone look at me and say, boy, that guy looks like he can shred like Tony Hawk, right? But I'm a person who cares about others' needs. Faith has had a free public skate park on our property for the last 17 years. Over those 17 years, relationships have been built, friendships have been made, and voices have been heard on what works best. 2172 is simple. We're asking for a variance to continue doing what Faith Church has done for the past 60 years. Continue building relationships with our community and meeting needs of those around us. Now, I could take you back a few years to 2004. You all have a visual aid there. Faith Congregation had committed to building a brand new community center, which you saw originally in the few slides back. By 2005, Faith had added additional parking along the south side of their current property as well as to the east of their existing parking, thus creating more parking for the proposed community center and overflow parking. At that time in 2005, State Road 26 was only a 2-lane road from Veterans Memorial Parkway to the east, but plans were in the works with INDOT to expand that to a 4-lane east of Faith's New Mercy Way curb cut, which is there presently. When the 2-lane road existed, the current parking lot was approximately 60 foot 7 inches away from the property line, in turn satisfying the 60-foot setback requirement at State Road 26 right-of-way. After the roadway expansion to 4 lanes, the public sidewalk was added, and the property line was moved to the north, forcing the existing parking lot to fall within that 60-foot setback, which brings us why we're here today. We're only asking to utilize what we had for almost the past 20 years. The skate park gives the public a place to go where there's nothing else that exists like it. We have developed this skate park with one of the nation's top skate park companies to give our community what it deserves, with the financial gifts not only of our congregation and local suppliers, but also our very own city and our county financially backing the efforts of this project. The safety of the people on this campus is always at the top of our list. Furthermore, this request will not impede current traffic flow. We chose this location with this very thing in mind. The south portion of our existing lot is somewhat deemed overflow parking, and with the addition of our new athletic complex going down into the 90 acres that she had mentioned earlier, the overflow parking can be repurposed into something our community needs. Third, we chose this area as it would have the least impact on our overall property. It's been said that Faith has a lot of property, and at this campus there is. Other areas could be utilized, but as I stand here today, part of the planning team that worked so diligently on carefully choosing this location, we think this location poses only positive impacts. Not only will the public be able to see this beautiful skate park from State Road 26, this location allows Faith staff to have passive oversight on this location at all times. As I mentioned earlier, with the additional cameras and being front and center of our 2 main buildings, we'll have continued access. Multiple areas of parking, and we're currently working with City Bus to potentially add a public bus route here, making it easier for skaters to enjoy the park from all areas of our great city. From our perspective, having this park and other locations on our campus could impact those points negatively. In summary, our request is not unusual, it's not unreasonable, it's simply allowing greater relationships to be built while we're ensuring the greatest effort of public safety to our guests and allowing proper oversight of the skate park. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition.
Good evening. My name is Arvid Olson. I live at 951 Percheron Place in Lafayette 47905. I've been involved with Faith Church for 45 years and have been on its professional staff for 21 years as a director of development. Over those years, I've had the honor of attending numerous BZA and other county meetings. I appreciate the time each of you volunteer for the betterment of our community, and I want to give a shout out to the staff. Working with many of them on a variety of projects over the past 21 years has been generally very, very positive. Alex Johnson nicely explained some of the background regarding our original approved master plan prior to the INDOT widening of State Road 26 and the granting of a zero lot line due to road construction. Had INDOT not done this, we wouldn't be here tonight discussing BZA 2172. But that's a lot line we've had to live with now for nearly 20 years with what has become a usable section of our approved large parking lot. The core of what I must share is in specific response to the staff opinion at the bottom of page 20 and the top of page 21 in the BZA agenda packet. We concur with a statement in point 2. This proposed skate park, the only park in a 30-mile radius, is not injurious to public health, safety, or general welfare in the community. By consensus with our designers, Hunger Skate Parks, we believe this is the best location for this amenity. After extensive consultation, we concluded a resource like this needs passive oversight, where other people using our site for other services and programs can observe what's going on in the park. In other words, it would be potentially detrimental and unsafe to tuck the park away on a less visible area on the campus. We believe that would be unwise for everyone involved. I'd also note that Brian Smith of City Bus is positively aware of the proposed skate park. He said that's a logical place for it. Furthermore, this request will not impede our current traffic flow. We chose this location with this very thing in mind. We also concur that our variance request will not adversely affect adjacent properties. After having operated a free community skate park for the last 17 years, we've learned not only how to operate a safe, inclusive, and welcoming park, but also one that encourages personal ownership. You might be surprised to know that in those 17 years, there has not been one instance of graffiti, tagging, or illicit substances. For the more than 1,000 youth who have frequently used our park, this was their space, and they treated it accordingly. I may not be able to say the same thing if it were placed in an obscure, out-of-the-way setting on our property. So perversely, we believe sincerely that the statement in point 5 that we have plenty of space on 100 acres to put this park is politely egregious and without substance other than to place the park in a less public location based on a setback requirement that was originally codified in the 1975 UZO. Placing this skate park in a less public location could, in the end, be actually detrimental to the safety and general welfare of the very constituents who would use this park. Now, speaking about Section 5A, where we're placing the skate park based on economic gain, it was interesting. And raising $800,000 to construct the park, including $200,000 from the city of Lafayette, and it's not even within city limits, and the $200,000 from Tippecanoe County, we never once intended to charge 1 penny for access or usage of this skate park. None of us are in this for the money, nor are we building this for Faith Church members, although I think walkers on it would be intriguing. None of us, this is all about meeting the needs of a group of teens and young adults who wish to gather and to socialize on skateboards. There is no economic gain, only a commitment to serve an egregiously underserved population of future leaders, creators, and doers. They have wanted a park in this town for years, and nobody was able to do it. We did it. We stuck our neck out. And frankly, we pay a lot of liability insurance on it. We have already suffered the hardship of having frontage removed by a state entity. To add insult to injury, that building a community-wide, world-class skate park on existing asphalt would be deemed in violation would only compound, frankly, the hardship we've already faced. I again thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you. And if you could please sign in, please. Speaking in favor of the petition.
Hi, my name's Ethan Grubel. I'm located at 5073 Saddle Drive, which is like 5 minutes walking distance from Faith. I just wanted to thank, first off, the Faith staff for giving us the opportunity to even potentially get a skate park. And then thank you all for your time for being here. So skateboarding, biking, scootering, rollerblading, all of that often gets a bad rep because of addicts and stuff like that. I just want to make it known that that's not the case here in our community. I first started going to Faith Community Center when I was 9 years old. My parents would drop me off. I would ride my skateboard there. I never had to witness anything of an addict doing something there. There's always been people around Faith. It's always a very busy spot. It's never been a problem with anything of that sort. Secondly, there's probably 6+ neighborhoods right around the area of Faith within walking distance. I myself was one of the kids who grew up in these neighborhoods where me and my friends would all go to the Faith skate park. We enjoyed our time there. It's probably our favorite place ever to go to as kids. We all got to spend time there. It was very fun. We all got to get very good at skateboarding. So I think it's definitely a need here in the community for the up-and-coming teenagers who are going to be living in that area and outside of the area. I myself just got accepted into going to one of the biggest amateur contests in the United States. So without Faith Skate Park, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that. Now that we don't have a skate park, I'm not able to train anywhere in town. Cruz back there is also one of them. He got accepted to this contest. He grew up here as well. So that's a big thing for us. Not being able to train here is pretty upsetting. We're constantly spending money on gas and everything to go to Indianapolis. We both ride for a skate shop in Indianapolis who sponsors us. This skate park could also help with future businesses. The skate shop in Lafayette could be a need once this is structured and made. That's could be somebody's career and somebody's passion that they want to get and pursue into. So that would be a big deal as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition.
Hi, my name is Melissa McCandless. I live at 5643 Frederick Drive in Lafayette. My husband is here with me, Joel. So we live in the Eagle's Nest subdivision that is directly north of the Faith property. So our home backs up against the Faith soccer fields. I'm sure many of you have been on those soccer fields. We've actually been at this address since 2014. We are not members of the Faith congregation, so we are simply here as concerned neighbors. We're here to speak in favor of Faith's proposed location. We truly believe that they have identified the optimal location for a skate park. We don't want it in our backyard. The Faith community is surrounded by neighborhoods, as Ethan just pointed out, so the location that they're proposing at the front of their property is the best location in terms of minimizing noise, lights, traffic. This type of resource does require passive oversight. You heard that. The proposed location allows Faith users, other community members traveling down 26 to help with that oversight. Yes, they do own 100 other acres, as Amanda pointed out. If you are familiar with the area and the development that is happening there, you know that this is indeed the best location for the reasons I just mentioned. We admire the thought behind their proposed location. It is clear that they are trying to actually be a good neighbor. And we also admire their desire to serve a segment of the community that is currently not being served by our city or our county government. The current parking lot has the 0-foot setback for NDOT's right-of-way. The proposed skate park would replace some of the existing parking lot and should not be treated any differently. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you please sign in, please? Speaking in favor of the petition. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? None? Comments, questions from the board?
I have a question for the petitioner.
Yes, sir.
I really like the skate park idea. I appreciate it that it's in our community. That's not the thing. How close it is to 26, that does raise some concerns regarding safety. In that traffic pattern, you're going from 55, you're going down to 45, just right about where it turns in there. A car going 45 or maybe even faster if they didn't slow down. If something would happen and it goes over, when it was a parking lot, one, it was there, and two, somebody could have been walking in the parking lot, but then a car out of control or accident, you never know what happens. They're going down that hill, but now they're going to go into where there could possibly be a lot of human beings congregated. And it didn't look, I realize that these are pictures and they're kind of mock-ups. I didn't see any protective barrier really from the threat, not from inside, but, you know, on State Route 26, an errant car, something happens, a collision, and somebody goes off. What, is there any safety matters or anything planned from traffic, from cars, a tire coming off of a truck, anything like that from State Route 26?
You know, when we spoke to the contractor that's designing the Hunger skate parks, that was one of their concerns as well, and they put forth some effort into managing where each individual ramp, if you will, would be to safeguard. If you notice, could you scroll to the rendering, please? Yes, please. If you notice, there is a buffer of added green space between some spaces there, as well as the added ramp above the bowl, right to the south of the bowl there. That is a retaining wall. So you have a lot of areas of green space and an area where that is approximately 4 feet tall, that retaining area would be. And that area would be protected. It would take a lot for a car not only to cascade 9 feet down, but then ascend 4 feet above to hit that retaining wall or any patron upon that. The other part that some of these photos don't represent well is the swale that's within that right-of-way. That swale is a fairly deep swale. In fact, we can't mow that the way we would mow other things. That has to be mowed differently because it is so deep. And so any car that would be descending down that hill would hit that right-of-way, hit that swale first. There you go. That you can see the difference in mowing there in that photo. It would be very difficult. We actually ran some scenarios to try to see this out of my office at Titan to see if there would be any ease to get to the skate park. And you'd really have to be not only moving pretty quickly, but you'd also endanger anyone that would be using the public sidewalk. And my point to that also would be, if it was a danger, I would ask, why do we have a sidewalk? Why do we have a public sidewalk 4 feet from the road? I know it is required, but if that is an issue, I'm hard-pressed to say that that sidewalk is there.
I see what you're saying. However, sidewalks are typically people in motion. Here, you're going to have people congregating.
Understood.
The 60-foot setback, that's a lot more distance to travel, you know, versus when it's a lot closer. And I realize the street was widening and things like that. There again, I don't know if if you pass this hurdle, do you have to go through anything with the state, or is there any more? I'm just concerned with that safety issue.
We've already approached the state, we received an exemption for a state design release. We've approached local government, we were deemed exempt for both building permits, state and local. We've been approved from the Drainage Board for an exemption as well. So the only thing that's preventing us currently from constructing this is this variance. Arvid, do you want to speak to that?
Can I ask a follow-up question to both of you?
Yes.
The exemption that you received, was that because of your religious organization status, or because these agencies had no safety concerns?
No, the Homeland Security, when they receive a state design release, there is no religious exemption for structures.
Okay.
This is deemed paving.
Okay.
Skate parks are unique in the fact that structures cannot be given an ADA exemption. That would be counterintuitive, as you might see, but it was deemed paving.
Thank you.
And then the same thing with local.
Thank you.
Yep.
Robert, it's a good question. I would say this. I was actually one of the people that helped break ground for this facility 39 years ago, and have been part of it for most of the last 39 years, short time out of state. There's always the first time, but in that time, we've not had anyone go into the swale. We've not had anyone go into the swale, and once again, it's fair to say there always are exceptions. But think about the fact of all of the days, all of the years, all of the speeds, all of the changes and everything else. We've not had that problem. We've not experienced it. We've not had ever to deal with hauling somebody out of there or anything. So, that's history. I'd love to project the future.
Any other questions?
I guess a follow-up on that. I mean, I can't really tell from the drawings, is there any type of a fence on that side that might prevent, even people just running down the hill into the skate park or?
We are inviting everyone to the skate park, and
Right,
we
would hope that they would come in through the parking lot, not from the state road.
It would be exceedingly difficult
Yeah.
if you were up on top of the berm near the road to go down and go there. Believe me, over the years, I've put up more signs, more permits for signs and everything else. There's a whole lot of ways along that road. You can't get there unless you go all the way down and then go back. If I was going to put a sign in front of that right now, I'd have to go all the way down to the monument sign at the entrance and walk back. You don't get through that. And frankly, a lot of the time, even with the drainage, permitted drainage we put in, there's water in the bottom of that puppy.
I was just thinking that if you did have a fence, it might also protect, against like a tire or something, but.
Understood.
Fair comment.
Understood.
Yeah, because I had the exact same concern that Robert had.
We've never seen a vehicle injured.
Right.
In the parking, is parking along there. That is currently where our teachers park every day when they're teaching school. There's not been any road-based injury to those vehicles.
In fact, our senior pastor parks right down there as well. So if he deems it safe, then I would assume
there would be a fence.
One other question I have, are there any utilities or utility easements on that side that could possibly be impacted?
The answer is no, other than
it's all within the right-of-way?
Yeah. Yep. We have, of course, you see that there are lighting poles there and everything else, and some of those would be moved, things like that, but we do not have any major utilities in that space.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions, comments? If not, we've got a ballot.
Appreciate your
Thank
questions,
you.
folks.
Thank you.
Shows 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
It sounds like a great project. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And we'll hear our last case.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2173, Lindsay and Tyler Sherman. Petitioners and owners are requesting a special exception to use both units in an existing duplex as a transient guest house operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, for a maximum of 6 guests per unit. The R2U zoned property is Lot 73 in Bartholomew and Davis addition to the City of Lafayette, commonly known as 500 North 6th Street in Lafayette, Fairfield 20, Southeast 23-4, with conditions and commitments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Good evening, everybody. Nathan McBurnett, ABC staff. We are just north of downtown here in the historic Centennial neighborhood underneath the historic Centennial overlay district, the form-based district. The property in question here is known as the Falcomer House, built in 1879 by a well-known local merchant, and has been since converted into a duplex from a single family. I'm not exactly sure when. The area, most of the residential properties to the north, including this site, are zoned R2U. We have some CB zoning just to the west, which is also residential use, and then a mix of commercial zones further down to the south as we approach downtown. The petitioner is seeking 2 transient guest houses, or both units being used as a transient guest house separately. They're proposing 3 double beds in each unit, totaling 12 maximum guests per day with 6 people per unit max and 2 separate bookings. They have proposed quiet hours of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Accommodations, just to kind of break down what it looks like inside the unit, would include 2 bedrooms per unit with a sofa sleeper in the living area of each unit. So that's kind of how it would be distributed. Visitors will not be allowed. Some proposed commitments that the petitioner is proposing are obviously the quiet hours. They're also saying there shall be no parties and no pets shall be allowed other than small dogs, subject to an associated pet fee. The property has ample parking. Here's a picture of the home. It's a beautiful Italianate house. Really nice garden over here. And then here's the parking. There's 5 parking spaces in the back. It's an abnormally large lot, so the parking space is it's almost as if it's parking for 2 separate lots. So parking should not be an issue. One thing that I did want to kind of touch on is that this is the first Airbnb in this neighborhood, so staff is not really concerned with it being kind of a saturation within the neighborhood. However, it should be noted that the proposed use would remove 2 residential units from Lafayette's long-term housing stock, which presents a more intense impact than the typical single-family transient guest house petitions this board more commonly hears. Now that this use is prohibited in single-family zones, it is unknown whether 2-family and multifamily transient guest house conversions in higher density zones like this one will become more common. Given the county's tight housing market, the rate of such conversions should be monitored closely across all existing residential units, regardless of zone, to avoid adverse impact on current and prospective residents in need of permanent housing options. That being said, staff is of the mind that the proposed use passes all the tests, and we're recommending approval with the proposed commitments as well as some conditions. A permit obviously has to be sought from the City of Lafayette Engineer's Office. And each unit may only be reserved for a single booking at any given time, so each of the 2 separate units. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Do you need my
Whatever
wife
you
to-
want.
Okay. Well, we're both on the proposal. I don't. All right. My name's Tyler Sherman. I reside at the 500 North 6th Street house you see there. We're requesting this zoning appeal as kind of a preemptive thing for my wife and I. We are currently in the throes of restoring another historical property on the corner of 8th and Columbia. It is our intention to hopefully move into that property when it's done. And this would be, something we could have addition to this. Let's see here. I'm going to mirror Laura's comments, who we heard from earlier. Our intention on this is to have a higher pricing because it is a nicer house. It's a historical property. It's beautiful on the inside. We don't want just your average Airbnb user to be having access to this. In addition to that, you had a lot of comments earlier about knowing whether the tenants would be throwing parties or whatever. Airbnb is a user rating program, so us as the people providing the property, we get rated, but so do the users. So if their users are, say throwing parties or doing unapproved activities, they get a rating, and if that rating is improper, then we have the right to deny them use of the property. There is plenty, I've heard a lot of issues about parking. There's ample parking, as was mentioned. Noise levels would be kept down. And recently we also went through the getting this property protected with Sean Lutz with some historical markings located at the front of the property. It's not our intention to abandon this property. We love it dearly, and that is all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak in favor of the petition?
Hello. Hi. My name is Stephanie Gustine. I've been a resident of Lafayette for almost 40 years. I've known Lindsay and Tyler for a very long time. I just want to speak in favor of just Airbnb usage because myself have used Airbnbs in Europe, here in Indiana, other states. I feel that when I travel, I want to get a feel rather for the community than rather being limited to, say, 26 with your high-density chain restaurants and hotels where, you're immersed more so with the downtown area and you get more of that feel of the community and the small businesses that surround it. And then, echoing what he said about the user ratings, how you can see what the rating is, and if they have been rated in the past, being less than ideal, you can deny them. There's questions you can vet heavily. And again, those high price points. So, I think, unfortunately, it gets a bad rap, because there's some bad apples that spoil it for the rest of us. But I do think it is something that is needed in addition to, your hotels and whatnot to get people to experience more of that community that would otherwise stay on the outskirts of the downtown area and might not traverse all the way down. And, if you're staying within walking distance of a nice restaurant, or shop that you just want to walk to, you have that ability to do so. So that is just what I want to speak on in my experience with just staying in Airbnbs and what I've dealt with, so.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Hi, my name is Kitty, and I am actually the petitioner's neighbor in the neighborhood, and I just bought the house recently, and I have no problem with my neighbor doing Airbnb. And in fact, we have been doing Airbnb for more than 10 years, and we stopped doing it a few years back because it was not actually that profitable, and it actually was a lot of work. And so during the period that we did Airbnb, we have hosted hundreds, if not 1,000 guests in Lafayette, Indiana here. not a single one actually party on our property, not a single complaint about parking. I think it is a myth that like people believe that Airbnb guests, they like to party, they don't like, they just like park in places where they are not supposed to. And then so during the period of time, actually Airbnb was really helpful. They have the 24/7 hotline. If we have any problem with guests, then we contacted Airbnb, and actually they could take care of the problem much more efficiently than the city. And so we really have no problem with doing Airbnb, and we also have no problem with our neighbors doing Airbnb. And then in terms of, in general, like we also own a few rental properties, and we have long-term tenants in Lafayette here. Most of our long-term tenants are actually Purdue students. And you know that most of the Purdue students, they actually wanted to break the lease early, and they would not commit to a 12-month lease because usually the academic year ends in May. And so when they break the lease, even though they are legally responsible for the entire period of the lease period, we still needed to have some ways that we can find some short-term people to occupy the properties when our students are away for the summer. And so I think that was usually when people actually needed to have an Airbnb in town for, because I don't think that most people will come to Lafayette here to party. In terms of what time we host Airbnb guests, they are mostly in the summer, just the parents or the students who are waiting to move to the dorms. If they come in September, October, then they're mostly just for the weekend for the games. If they come in December or May, then they're mostly here for the graduations. And in between, we mostly just have travel nurses, workers, and then sometimes maybe insurance adjusters when State Farm still had the hub here. But then other than that, most Airbnb guests were really like respectful, and there was no issue at all. And that's why for that reason, I have no problem with my neighbor doing Airbnb on their property.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition to the petition?
Hello, my name is Kay Connor. I live at 501 North 5th Street, just at the opposite to where the Sherman House is. And I am representing the members of the Centennial Neighborhood Investment Group, the Historical Centennial Neighborhood Association, and I'm the president of our Centennial Townhomes that occupy half the block. The Shermans have been great neighbors. We have no problem with that. But I would like to have the 9th Street Hill people and their eloquence talk about why we might not want an Airbnb right on our block that's having 12 new people living there. The only real difference between the 9th Street Hill people and ours is that we do have parking. Even if they didn't have parking in the back, we have plenty of street parking in our neighborhood. But the 9th Street home had somebody on site, and this would be nobody there. And I know you can say there's no parties, you can say it's quiet, you can say whatever you want, but if you're relying on getting a bad rating later to keep somebody out, that bad thing happened already. So that's a problem for us. There are many, the rest of the people that didn't speak for it tonight are here against it, and we submitted a petition from the neighborhood. Those of us in the neighborhood right around this property who own our properties are advocates of the plan for the Centennial neighborhood to increase owner occupancy. And this is exactly the opposite of that. Another difference between us and 9th Street Hill is that we don't have as cohesive and established neighborhood, and we're really working towards that. We want to make this a better neighborhood. We want to make it a good place for families to buy, and that's one of the things that the Centennial Neighborhood Investment Group is dedicated to, and they're the ones that bought the property that I and some of my neighborhood live in. Partnered with the city to buy that block where Midwest Rentals used to be so that they could control what was going there. And since then, they have bought other properties and turned them from rentals into single-family owner-occupied homes. And that's the dedication that we all have for our neighborhood. And this is the worst thing that could happen for that kind of aim for our neighborhood. I think that's all. We probably have other people that want to say something, but thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name is Hannah. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my husband Ryan, who is traveling right now, so he can't be here. We own the house directly next to this property, 508 North 5th Street. It's currently a long-term rental. Our plan is my elderly parents are in England and they need help. We're going to go to England for a year. But our plan when we get back is that that house next door, 508, will be our primary family residence. We didn't choose to live next to an Airbnb, nor would we choose to, for fairly obvious reasons, I would think. We have an 11-year-old daughter, and even if this Airbnb operated at half capacity for half the year, and nobody wants an Airbnb that operates at half capacity half the time, so that's not ideal, that would still be over 1,000 strangers cycling through the neighborhood a year, and that is not how community is made. It is nice that people want to stay in an Airbnb to experience community. But how did that community get made? It wasn't through Airbnbs. Communities are made because your children are the ones playing in the park across the street, and your children are the ones who go to the local schools. And you give a crap because it's your family that is living in that space day in and day out. And I have nothing against people who stay in Airbnbs. I'm not worried about parking. I'm not worried about parties. I am more concerned about how community is developed and sustained. And I think it's a slippery slope to say this is the first one, and so we're not worried about saturation because, well, like I said, that's kind of a fallacy of a slippery slope, I think.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name's Barbara Dixon. I live at 603 North 5th Street. I've lived in the neighborhood for 25 years. I am on the board of Centennial Neighborhood. I am in the investment group, and my husband and I currently in the investment group have more than $30,000 invested for projects. Right now, we're looking for a project in the neighborhood. And I say that because I have put my money where my mouth is in terms of this neighborhood. And this is a beautiful house, and it would make a beautiful house to be sold. Lindsay and Tyler are moving. They could sell their house, but instead they have opted to do a moneymaker, which we know Airbnbs are, and at the expense of the neighborhood that they live in now. And I think if you asked yourselves honestly, if you would like to live next door to an Airbnb, you would say no, because as Hannah said, it's not a way to build a community. And there's no one on site. There is not, there won't be any oversight in terms of who is there. And I think that when you look at the words from the staff comments, that this presents a more intense impact than the typical single-family transient guest house. And for these reasons, I really hope that you will vote against this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition?
Hello, my name is Stuart Frescas. I live at 421 Brown Street, quite close to this house. I also am the owner of 415 Brown Street, 419 Brown Street, and 421 Brown Street. And the petitioner says that, well, this is the first Airbnb in the neighborhood. I've lived in my house since 1992, and I think this neighborhood is on the precipice of a lot more attention, because now it's becoming more apparent that you can live in this neighborhood or in this area and access Purdue more easily than you can from some other places. And so the thing is that this Airbnb could very much become a very attractive football party house, and also I think that there's one thing that concerns me a little bit is that, okay, this particular house may be a little bit more suited for an Airbnb than some other structures in the neighborhood, but the thing is that if this became a very profitable business, then I think that a lot of other structures in the neighborhood would become endangered. And Mr. Schroeder made the point that the approval goes with the owner, I mean, the person who is a petitioner, and that it isn't transferable. I think it's very important that you do this, because otherwise there's an incentive for property owners in this neighborhood to go before you, try to get a change in the zoning so they can increase the value of their property. And so the other thing about, the Airbnb owners are so responsive. I had some friends who stayed in Airbnb in a neighborhood that's adjacent to this neighborhood, and they were left standing outside for 2 hours while the owner, who nominally lives in town, was trying to get somebody to go over there to give them the keys. And so they were staying outside, milling around, like in front of this house. And so that's what you get when you have an Airbnb in your neighborhood. And so myself, in some ways, so this is the first house, but I am much more worried about the ones that come later than this particular one. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Could you please sign in? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? Hearing none. Petitioners, you have a rebuttal?
Yes, can you pull up the zoning map that was up there? We were presented with the 17 signatures that were on the petition, 2 of which were Hannah and Stuart here, who own rental units, so they've been able to get their money back as an investment, which they are complaining against. The 12 of the other 17, you see the CB there. It is my understanding that CB zoning can at any time become an Airbnb. So these guys have the proper zoning to get their money or whatever, their nut, so to say, and they're petitioning against us. So I find that kind of arbitrary, and I'll turn it over to my wife, I guess.
Hello, I just want to say I have a very vested interest in monitoring the house, keeping it nice. I love historical homes. We've always kept our homes very nice. My husband put up a privacy fence recently in the last couple years, which would also be helpful in just the overall noise or whatever. We actually recently had a fence fall down in our yard, and our next-door neighbor, who has already spoken at this hearing, we've reached out 5, 10 times. It's a property manager. Reached out. It's actually their fence. But now we're going to have to fix it because we are the sole owners of the property. So what I'm saying is, do we want rentals? We have people opposing this B&B who have 5 or 6 rentals in our neighborhood. Granite, Smart Digs, whatever Stewart's rentals are, they're falling apart as well. I cannot tell you one house on my street that is a single-family home besides the condos that signed this petition that is CB. So I just don't see how the park, Wintech, and the rentals next to me are going to be impacted by this B&B. I stay in so many B&Bs. We have never hurt anything around us. There's plenty of parking, and they may get sort of a bad rap, but overall, you keep a B&B up. You make sure that it looks great. You want everybody to want to come to it. Rentals, you get these property managers. They let everything fall apart. That's not always the case, but in my experience in this neighborhood, it is the case. So I am just, so let's say we do move to Columbia Street. We aren't sure yet. We're not sure. We're just trying to get this special exemption in case we do. Would you rather us turn it into a rental or sell it to a rental property, someone that is going to let it fall apart? I don't think so. I love the house. I love the neighborhood. I don't know many of the neighbors because there isn't very many neighbors. They're in and out rentals. We've had 2 different people live next door to us. So whatever happens, we will make sure that this is a really nice rental, and we will make sure that the neighbors are very happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions from the board? But unless somebody wants to recognize you, public comments over.
I'll recognize you.
You will? Okay.
I think Michael might want to talk to you. We are zoned CB, but our restrictive covenants don't allow rentals and don't allow Airbnbs. Our most recent buyer, who was right next door to me, his first question as he was moving in was, can I Airbnb this? And I said, absolutely not. And so we're not allowing that, whether it's CB or not. And I did, Barbara mentioned, but I meant to point out before that in the staff comments, it says, however, as the first transient guest house in this neighborhood, staff is not yet concerned about a drastic change in the residential neighborhood character, not yet concerned. So we have to wait until something bad happens before it creates a concern. And that's our concern. Thanks.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Does somebody want to recognize Michael Hunt?
Yes, that's fine. Come forward.
Okay, Tim recognizes you. Please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Michael Hunt. I live at 602 North 5th Street, 1 block from the house in question. I have lived there since 1993, so I'm basically the oldest resident in the neighborhood. I own the property. I restored a historic house, just like the one that is the subject of the discussion. And I'm the founding chairman of the Wabash Valley Trust Plaque Committee, which is the green marble plaque that's on the front of the house, which acknowledges outstanding ownership. The single thing that I can say about all of this is that, as I've indicated, since 1993, my late wife and I restored our house and then used it as a iconic symbol for restoration in the rest of the neighborhood, like, again, the house in question. And what we were doing, we think, is recreating a neighborhood. When we moved down there was no owner occupancy. It was all residential. This specific house, for years prior to its current ownership, was by, the ownership consisted of a long-term rental resident on the first floor and a jewelry store on the ground floor. And then they bought it. We would have loved to have seen it purchased as an owner occupied. So at any rate, again, the theme, the importance to me is a bed and breakfast does not, or an Airbnb is not the same as a rental. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to the board.
Since we had more public comment, I wonder if the petitioners have any more rebuttal. If not, that's fine. So, hearing none, I'll go on with my typical motion to, since the petitioners made a case of what they want to do with it, I would move that the special exception would cease if ownership changed or the owners were no longer the managers.
And
I second that.
have a motion and a second, just to verify that that is agreeable to you.
That is absolutely agreeable to us.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any comments on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion is part of the petition now. Any other comments or questions?
I want to make sure that the petitioner understands that for each unit, you can only have 3 unrelated.
Yes, we are aware of that current standing in the community. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for confirming that.
Yeah.
Did you have something, Tim, or?
No.
Good. Okay. If there's no other questions, we've got a ballot.
I show 7 votes in favor and 0 opposed.
Special exception has been approved. Administrative matters.
Staff would like to remind the board and anybody listening that the October meetings for Area Plan Commission on the 3rd Wednesday and Area Board of Zoning Appeals on the 4th Wednesday of October will be held at the Lafayette City Hall instead of in this room because of early voting.
Better tell Eric that.
Yeah.
He's going to show up here, I bet.
He's got another month yet. Unless any member has an objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board to be the collective findings of the board in support of the decision of the board. Hearing none, it is so ordered. And I'll take the last motion, please.
I move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.